Stuka Joe here. Today we're going to be playing a few turns of this game, Malta Besieged. We're going to be playing them live. And this is a game that is designed by Steve Carey, and it was published originally in 2011 by Victory Point Games in one of those what do you call them, Ziploc or Polybag editions. And this year, Worthington Publishing finally gave it a deluxe treatment. And I did already an unboxing, and it looks fantastic. So the components are really nice. And this is one of the highest regarded States of Siege games. And sometimes people dismiss these games because of their simple mechanics, but there's a lot involved in this one. The player takes control of the Allies, and you are fighting the war in the Mediterranean. At the beginning, you're fighting off the Italians, and then the Germans come in. You have German planes, the Luftwaffe, you have German U-boats, you have the Africa Corps. And there's a lot of ways that you can easily lose this game. And of course, all States of Siege games are hard to win, otherwise they wouldn't be so attractive, I suppose. So this one is also easy to lose. Now, in this particular game, you have to worry about fronts advancing on the central position of Malta. And that's the 0 space that we see there on the screen. If any of the fronts advances into Malta, you don't lose automatically, but then you have to roll a die and check here in the Operation Hercules table. And there's some calculations you have to make, roll a die, and it is very likely that you will lose the game. So venturing the Operation Hercules table is not a safe thing here in this game. Now, going back to the fronts that are present in this game, let's take a look at each one of them. And if any of you can send me a chat, I have my chat on, I can answer questions, make sure it's working, I would appreciate it. Here we see the possible 4 tracks that converge on the space of Malta. And they are color-coded, and we see, for instance, the space of the Regia Aeronautica, which is here. This is the Italian Air Force. We have the Regia Marina, which is the Italian Navy. And we have Cossack Super Eagle 1. Thanks. Okay, so the chat is working. So at the beginning of the game, we have these 2 fronts, the Italian Navy and Italian Air Force, moving on to Malta. Later on, we're going to have the Luftwaffe, and it has this blue track here that, of course, ends in Malta. And then we're also going to have the German U-boats that start over here in the Atlantic. So we're going to have to worry about 4 fronts. Now, the game is not only about us defending Malta. And thanks, TC, appreciate it. Chat is working. We have to worry about North Africa. And after all, Malta, historically, was in a position that it could hurt the supply lines from Italy into North Africa, as historically it did. And at the beginning of the game, we're going to see the Italian army, represented by this counter here, the Regio Esercito, attempting to move eastward. Now, if at any time, either the Italian army or later the Africa Corps advances here into this Cairo space, we automatically lose the game. And if it advances into Alexandria and it is still there at the end of a turn, we also lose the game. So that's 2 ways in which we can lose the game. So we have to be pushing back the Italian army and later the Africa Corps, which is, of course, a more formidable opponent. And you see that there's Tobruk at the beginning of the game. That's where the Italian army starts. When we obtain control of Tobruk, we can make Tobruk a fortress. The Axis, the Africa Corps, may try to conquer Tobruk or bypass it. And that's another interesting aspect of the game that we'll have to deal with. But for now, this is how the game starts. And the game is played with cards. Let's take a look at the decks of cards involved in this game. The cards are divided into 3 decks by epochs. The first epoch is represented by these cards here with the green background. So it represents roughly when the Allies were fighting the Italians. Some of the cards have this red box here. It means that this is a seeded card. This particular card is always going to be the first card in the game. So we place it on the top of the pile. The other cards we shuffle and we form a draw pile. And we place the number 1 card on top, and we place this pile of cards here in the draw pile space. And we will be drawing cards into the discard pile and going through the cards from top to bottom. Now the other 2 decks represent when Rommel arrived. This would be roughly 1941. So we have a lot of cards, and some of the cards have this title here in red, meaning there's going to be a convoy battle to resolve. And that's one of the more interesting aspects of this game. These convoy battles represent convoys of supplies sent by the Allies to Malta. So we have to ensure that at least something comes in those convoys. Losing the whole convoy or all of the supplies of the convoys is going to hurt us, as we will see later. So this is the deck that corresponds to the middle deck, roughly 1941 when Rommel arrives. And then there's going to be another deck which represents 1942 and the high water mark of the Axis. And Rommel attacking, Tobruk will fall with one of these cards. So we have to survive all 49 cards in order to still be in contention to win the game. We don't win the game automatically just by surviving all 49 cards. And we have to survive the whole deck in order to have a chance to win. And that is, of course, with these games, it's really tough, but that's part of the enchantment of these games. So let's take a look at what other features the game has. The game has a track here to keep track of the hits during a convoy battle. So the convoy will suffer 0 to 6 hits, and after it suffers those hits, we resolve here in the convoy display mat if the hits made us lose supply. So let's say that the card that was played was that number 13 Operation Excess card. Let's suppose the convoy suffered 3 hits. Then we would roll 3 dice, and if we obtain a 1, 2, or 3, that particular die roll doesn't cause any loss, but a 4 would make us lose 1 supply, and a 5 or a 6 another supply. And if we lose both supplies, we're going to be penalized in the game, and if at least one of them goes through, we will get an extra action and morale will be increased by 1. So that's very in a nutshell what a convoy battle is. We can use one of our actions in order to place air support, which has an effect of a -1 die roll modifier, which makes losing supplies less likelier for us. But that's in essence, in a very nutshell, what a convoy battle is. We will see one when we pull a card. So let's just start playing the game. So here we have the game set up. We will be following the sequence of play that is in the map. There's a summary here of the sequence of play, and I find it very helpful. I have to consult the rules very infrequently. The first thing is the headline phase. So we flip the topmost card on the deck, and of course that is the first card of the game, which we already saw. It is this card, Faith, Hope, and Charity. Let's take a closer look at this card. All these cards have color text, which I like the color text, the historical text, which has no effect on play, but it's very immersive. The Italian Air Force launched a series of raids on Malta starting on the 11th of June 1940. Uncrated, obsolete gladiator fighters miraculously helped sustain the island's air defense, and swordfish attack planes like the one you see here also arrived from France, and the Axis bombings continued upon the Allies' neglected fortress Malta. And we see that the next phase that we have is the military phase. Here we see the sequence of play. Let me see if I can. Okay, now it's not working. Just a second. Okay. Okay, the next phase we see here. See if it works now. And I lost my remote control. Let's see, I don't know. I can't gain control of my camera for some reason. That's the pitfalls of live filming. Let me see if I can get it back. No, just a second, folks. Okay. What the hell was that? Just a second. Okay, I think we're back. Okay. Tech issues, yes, they never fail. So we're back. Let's see where we were. Let me see if, yep, we're back. And the next phase I was talking about was the military phase. Okay, so we're back in the military phase. Okay, yes we are. Thanks TC, appreciate that feedback. Okay, so the military phase is where we resolve the results of any military advances indicated by the card. So let's go back to the card. And we see it says that the Regia Aeronautica advances 1 box. So the Regia Aeronautica starts in the number 3 box. So now it advances 1 box towards Malta into the number 2 box, which is North Sicily. So it's getting too close for comfort, 2 boxes away. Now, this fortress that you see here is significant because this serves to stop advances, but it's not 100% effective. Whenever, let's say that Regia Aeronautica was supposed to advance from East Sicily into the fortress, then we roll a die and it only advances on a roll higher than 2. So that fortress reduces the chance of advancing by 33%. That's not very encouraging. However, we can conduct what is called a fortify action, and we can increase the strength of the Malta fortress by 1, and in another turn we can try to increase it by 4. It's not automatic. We also have to roll higher than that number that you see there. So that's one of the priorities, I believe, at the beginning of the game. We want to make sure. We got Jeffrey from Fort Bragg. How you doing, Jeffrey? We want to make sure that we can increase the fortress level of Malta, but of course you never have enough actions in this game to do all that you want. So we just advanced the Regia Aeronautica. Now we go to the resource phase, and there's no adjustment to our resources, so that's good, because normally it's we lose resources, which is normally the case. Next, we take a look at the orders. We now place die roll modifier markers to remind us of applicable die roll modifiers during the orders phase. So it says -2 for the Regia Marina and Regio Esercito. So let's place those markers now. So Regia Marina, a -2, so that discourages us from trying to push that particular front back. We would have to roll higher than the 2, but there would be a -2. And there's also a -2 here with the Regio Esercito. The game only brings one -2 marker. It should have brought another one, but it's okay. We'll use 2 -1 markers there. So there's another one, which is a +1. So here we're being encouraged to conduct a military resource action. So we place a +1 marker in to our military resource. I'll place it here. Now, military resources are important that they don't reach 0. If this marker reaches 0, we can only attack one front per turn, or one air support action in cases we have a convoy. So it limits our offensive ability significantly. So now we have to choose what we are going to do. Now we are very tempted to try to increase our military resources by 1 because we have that positive die roll modifier. But on the other hand, we have that Regia Aeronautica 2 spaces away from Malta. And of course, the fortification of Malta, right now its fortress level is 2, which is kind of weak. Normally in this first turn I like to try to increase the fortress level, or I'll go for the military resource. I think I'll go for the military resource because I know that there are certain cards that will follow that in the resource phase will decrease the military resource. So we have our military resource action. So we have to roll higher than 4, but we have a +1 die roll modifier. So let's bring in our super duper dice tower here. And we're going to roll 1 die. And we add 1 because of the modifier. We need higher than 4. So here we go. The roll is a 5. And of course, that's modified to a 6. So that's a successful roll. So that means that now we increase the military resource marker now to the number 2 box. So that was good. I mean, you can't ask for anything better than that. And that is the sole action that we have in this turn, as indicated here by the card that you see here. So the next phase is what is called Housekeeping Phase, which is the last phase of the turn. I'll show you what is shown here in the sequence of play summary. Convoy arrival, this only applies if this was a convoy card. It isn't. We don't have to check for a defeat or victory because there's no units entering into the Malta space. So now we would go to section C, which is refresh the map. And not all of these steps apply, but of course the one that does apply is the one where we remove all the die roll modifier markers from the map. So let's do that now. And we remove these markers and we place them in the holding box. And so we did that. And that's the end of the first turn. So you've seen just 1 turn. Of course, there's 48 cards to go, and we went very slow. So now we go to the next card. So let's see what that next card will be. And it is the Fall of France. And we have Gerblitz from Germany. Nice to see you. The fall of France, the capitulation of France in late June 1940 put Malta in an extremely precarious position. With the removal of the French Navy from the equation, the balance of power theoretically shifted to the Italian Navy, which matched up well, at least on paper, against the British Mediterranean fleet. We will have two actions in this turn, but first there is the military phase, and we see an advance by the Regia Marina. So let's conduct that first. And the Regia Marina is currently in the number 2 box. So now it advances into Mare Nostrum, the number 1 box. And of course now we are very concerned because that is just one step away from Malta. So we have two actions in this turn, but it's good to know that we can increase the number of actions. Let me explain. This supply resource, as long as we have supply points, we can use them for increased number of actions. So we have two actions in this turn, but if things are going really bad, we can burn one or more. It could be in this case 2 points for extra actions, but if we burn all points, we reach this 0 box, and then we get the penalty. All attacks against fronts have a -1, so we got to be careful with that. But just to let you know that we can have more than 2 actions in this turn. But our turn, we don't go to our turn yet. Let's go now back to the card. Now, resources. Morale goes down by 1, and if not yet in play, we place the ultra marker in the holding box, and it would be now available for purchase. So morale goes down by 1. So our morale level, which is at 2, why is it at 2? Because it decreased in the other turn? Yes, it decreased. Now, why is it at 2? It should be at 3. It starts at 3. I think I misplaced it. Yes, okay. Morale is at 3, so now it's reduced to 2. Okay? And now, as indicated by the card here, we place the ultra marker in the holding box. And the ultra marker starts at the beginning of the game off map. And now we place it in its holding box, and you will see it here. And it means that it is available for purchase. We could use one of our actions for an ultra action. And what is ultra good for? Let's take a closer look here. It's not automatic. We purchase an action, we have to roll a die, and only if a 1 is rolled, then it's no use for us that turn. So we got a pretty good chance of using it. And if we use it, we can use it for convoy escort. And that means that all critical hits rolled against the convoy are ignored. Critical hits are those that each hit causes two die rolls of loss. So these are the more harmful hits. So that's an important use. But we can also use it for intelligence. That allows us to see the next card ahead, like in a coin game. We would take a look at the next card coming up, and we can place a +1 die roll marker on any Axis front or on the Axis convoys, the raid box. The raid box, we conduct raids after the Africa Corps is in play. That's the way that we can obtain favorable die roll modifiers against the Africa Corps. But the Africa Corps won't enter in this first deck of cards that we're seeing here. So that's the ultra marker. We have that option of using the ultra marker. So now we have to choose our two actions. Of course, the first action will be to push back the Regia Marina, which is adjacent to our Malta space there. So let's use that action, and let's bring in our dice tower here. And it's 1d6. We don't have any die roll modifier, so we need to roll 3 or higher. So here goes our first action, and the roll is a 6. So that's obviously a success. And now the Regia Marina marker retreats back to Taranto, which is where it started the game from. So we've burned one of our 2 actions. I made this little cube here. We have 1 action left. And of course we can use supply if we want to conduct more than 1 action. I think it's a good idea to try to increase the fortress level of Malta. So let's try to do that. So let's bring in our dice tower once again. And this time we have to roll higher than the fortress level, which is 2. So we need a 3 or more. So here we go. And a 1, that is a failure. So that is our 2 actions, unless we want to spend a supply point. Do we want to spend a supply point? That's one of the tough decisions here. We see our supply is at 2, and you may say, oh yes, you got 2 points, spend 1, but you don't know if the next card is going to have -1 in that resource phase that you're going to lose a supply. So having 2 assures you that most likely you will have supply for the next turn. So I think we're going to end the turn right here, and we will go to the next turn. But before, we have housekeeping to do. Oh wait, no, wait a second, I screwed up. It's another thing about live videos. Let's put the Regia Marina back. Here we go. I forgot to place the die roll modifiers. Here we go. Before I roll dice, I have to place these die roll modifiers. Let's do that now. So we'll backtrack again. Yeah, I thought this was too easy. -2 die roll modifier for Regio Ejercito. -1 for morale. And Regia Marina and Regia Aeronautica have a -1. Of course, it discourages us from going after the Italians. They're on the offensive. So we've placed all these markers here, and we have to place 1 here for the morale. So now we conduct our 2 actions. So still the Regia Marina is a threat, and we have 2 actions. I think we'll have to roll. It's a pity, we wasted a 6. So we're going to have to roll anyway against the Regia Marina here. So let's place our dice tower, and we're going to use the first action. We got to roll 3 or higher, and we got a -1. So here we go. First of 2 actions, 3 or higher, and 3. We got to roll higher than 3 actually, because 3 -1 is 2, which is not higher than Regia Marina. So the die roll is a modified 2, so that's a failure. So now we have to decide if we're going to use our second action to push the Regia Marina. I think we don't have a choice, because if the next card calls for it to advance, we're going to we may even lose the game in the 3rd card, which is kind of embarrassing. So here we go. We're going to roll second action to try to push back the Regia Marina. And now it's even worse. So that's a 1. That's also a failure. And so now we're going to have to burn one of our supplies here. So let's burn one of our supplies for a 3rd action, and the 3rd action will be again to roll, try to push back the Regia Marina. So we roll 1d6, and the roll is a 4 -1, 3. Finally, Regia Marina is pushed back to the Taranto space. So gives us a breather, but we wasted a lot of actions there, so that's not good. And we still have one more supply point, but we don't want to have our supply go down to 0. So that's going to be the end of our actions. And now we simply remove all the die roll modifier markers from the board. That's the end of the second turn. And now we go to the third turn and we flip the next card. So let's see now, which is the next card. And it is Fliegerkorps. Let's take a closer look. Fliegerkorps 10, after Spain's refusal to assist with a planned capture of Gibraltar, the transfer of a Luftwaffe formation from Norway in December 1940 dramatically altered the Malta campaign, experienced German pilots bomb Malta's harbors, airfields and shipping, and crippled the British carrier Illustrious on the 10th of January 1941. So let's check the military phase. We have an advance by the Regia Aeronautica, and then we have the Luftwaffe marker with an asterisk. If not yet in play, which is the case, we place the 4 battle value Luftwaffe unit in its number 3 Reggio Calabria space instead of advancing it. Okay, so the Luftwaffe is peculiar in this game because there's 2 markers for the Luftwaffe. There's a 3 marker and a 4 marker. So sometimes the Luftwaffe strength is going to be 3, sometimes 4. This particular card reads that if not yet in play, we introduce the number 4 Luftwaffe marker. And we advance the Regia Aeronautica. So let's do that. So the Regia Aeronautica is in the number 2 box. So now we move it into East Sicily number 1 box, so it's right next to Malta. And we place the Luftwaffe 4 strength unit as stated there in the Reggio Calabria space, which is here the number 3 box. If it would have been already in play, it would have advanced, but it wasn't, so it's far away for us to concern us about that unit or front now. Problem is the Regia Aeronautica. So now let's go to resources. And the card reads -1 to all resources. You see? -1 to all resources. So we start with the morale now goes down to 1. And now supplies go down to 0. And now we're going to have a penalty there with our supplies. So I'll just leave it like this. And military, because we were able to increase it in the first turn, goes down to 1. In this game, if all your resources go down to 0, you lose automatically. So we're pretty close to losing the game just on resources. Okay. So let's take a look at the penalties that we suffer because our supplies are at 0. It means we can't conduct any raids, but raids only happen as a way of obtaining favorable die roll modifiers against the Afrika Korps. So that's no big deal right now. The Afrika Korps is not in play, but we get a -1 die roll modifier against all attacks that we make against the fronts. So that's pertinent and very relevant to what we're trying to do, which is push them back. So we are in really dire straits very early on in the game. So let's see